How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How about you guys? Thanks for
Oh,
having me.
oh man, what a pleasure, man, an honor. So, we know what a stud you are on the map, but the biggest thing to me is Tim continuously speaks of just what a good human being you are. Sean Briscoe is a dear friend, continuously speaks of just what a good human being you are. And that for us is the biggest through line right there, man, is that, we just know you're a quality human being too. And that's freaking awesome, man. So thank you for being here, brother.
No, thanks so much for having me. Sorry, I missed the first half of the convo so far, but
No worries, man. No worries at all. These guys are absolute studs. And so I'll make sure you have context on all this, but this is what it's what I get to do every Friday, man. I get to jump on with young men like this that are quite literally the leaders that this country needs. And they're just stacking their tool belt, man, every single week, and that's what Tim and I designed this for us. We can bring in the best of the best of the best. These guys get to talk with the best men on the planet every single week, but they're walking through the game of life and taking on these projects and challenges so they can continue adding, tools to the tool belt so that when you and I are, let's talk you and I, you're like 27 or something. I'm 43 and I got a great freaking beard. So when I'm old and you're older, these guys are stepping into those leadership roles, and taking care of us too, man. So it's pretty freaking rad.
that's amazing. Amazing. Love that.
So we'd love to dive into you a little bit since we got you here. I'd love to kind of get a little bit of a background on you and your story. And I'd like to start our mentors kind of back. We got some guys here that are 12, 13, 15, 17. I like to kind of go back to when you were sort of in that age and go, okay, man,
Yeah.
who were you? Like, who were you at
Yeah.
that time? Were you this just freaking stud of a human? Were you a guy that was like, I'm trying to figure it out? Like, who were you at that point?
So 12 is actually when I first found Jiu-Jitsu. So I started at age 12. I'd done martial arts pretty much from probably like close to 4 or 5 years old. I started with traditional martial arts, karate, taekwondo. It was just an after school activity, but 12 is when I found Jiu-Jitsu. And I was immediately drawn to it. I immediately had, I wouldn't say I was particularly talented at it, but I definitely did have like a natural tendency for it. Like
Yeah.
I could pick it up. I was always athletic, so it wasn't like I was like a clumsy, person. I knew how to like move. I'd always done sports and martial arts, et cetera, et cetera. And so I always enjoyed it straight from the beginning. I was very drawn to it. But for the longest time, I kind of subconsciously knew that I wanted to do something. I knew for sure that I wanted to do that forever because I was very drawn to it, and my focus was on that pretty much all the time. And
Yeah.
so I became very obsessive over it, which is unlike me for a lot of things. I don't become very hyper upset, or sometimes I will for a while, and then I'll drop off it. I played a bunch of different sports that I enjoyed for 3 to 6 months, and then I just lost interest. But I never really lost interest in it. And so, but I didn't have, a lot of direction, and I was being pulled in a bunch of different directions based around, what I was told I should do. Once you start getting into that age of like 16, 17, it's like you already got to start thinking about graduating and like, okay, you have to do something with your life. And so I didn't have a direction that I wanted to take. And I knew I enjoyed this. And I'm naturally a competitive person. So pursuing a competitive outlet for me was always good. Um, but it's hard to say that I really planned, like I really like had my feet on the floor to where like I was 12, 13, 14, 15, that I knew, oh, this is exactly where I'm going to be in 10 years or 12 years or whatever the case may be. And so it kind of all happened. I don't want to say randomly, like I had kind of like a subconscious, like unspoken direction that I wanted to go. I just didn't quite know how I was going to map it out at that age. Whereas now, and in the last 5 years or so, I can much more clearly identify, where I want to be, what goals I want to set, et cetera, et cetera. So I definitely didn't have, a ton of direction. I had, I guess I could say, something that was attractive to me, something that I had a lot of focus on, something that I thought I was good at and that I just genuinely enjoyed. And then it was just a matter of, okay, this is where people tell you, this is what people tell you what you should do, but I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And this is what I enjoy, but how can I make that, my life, um,
Yes.
and, fulfill, a quote unquote successful life for me.
So good.
Um, and so this kind of like started happening, little by little, and eventually, I think with enough focus and direction, and and also passion, like if you're enjoying what you're doing, you're going to eventually figure it out.
100%. We tell, one of the things these guys hear me say over and over again is fire, aim, ready, right? You need to go. You need to just do. You need to do.
Yeah.
And as you do, it's kind of like what you said. Then it starts to become clear. You don't have to necessarily have the full long tail vision. You need to do
Yeah.
first, and then you start to get some of that clarity. You start to be able to identify different routes. So you were already identifying, at this early age, hey, this is kind of the first thing that is bringing out this somewhat of an obsessive quality around this, and I'm not getting sick of this, so I'm seeing that I might want to do something with that. But you start realizing that around the same time where everybody is saying, well, here's what everybody else does at this point. You got to graduate, you got to go to, right? So as you're working through that, did you have support? Like, was your family super supportive on, oh man, go ahead, let's be a ninja at this? Or were they in that crowd of like, yeah, that's nice that you have jujitsu, honey, but you need to also kind of look at this? What was that support system like?
It was that I didn't have, especially early on, until I started to kind of like, take the reins for myself. I didn't have the support. So in the beginning, like I come from like my parents are both immigrants, so they have a very different view of the world because they come from different countries.
Right.
And so for them, like everything is like you need security. And so obviously when you come from a different country and you kind of build up this life, like this American dream, essentially. You want to protect that as much as possible. And so I understand the mentality, like where they're coming from. And so, my dad would have probably wanted me to just go to school and, get a degree in something and then find a job. But I mean, as we all know, it's not always that black and white. Like it's not always that simple, because a lot of times you can't find jobs. A lot of times, an industry could just completely collapse. And so there's some security, but it's not 100%, secure. It's kind of, I really believe that no matter what, the only secure thing that you have is your ability to do exactly what you just said, which was make a decision and just follow through with it. That's the most. And so for me, that was like one thing that for a long time, I'm just naturally an indecisive person. Like if you take me to a restaurant and tell me to pick up something, it takes me forever. I'm always asking the next guy like what he's going to order, And so when I was younger, I had a hard time being decisive with things. And so if you asked me, like, I don't have any regrets, but if you asked me one thing that I wish I would have done, which would have been just make a decision faster. Like, don't think about something too long if I had to go back. And so but going back to the support, so I didn't have that in the beginning, so I definitely struggled a lot with that, because it's not like playing professional, like, I don't know, football or basketball or something, where it's like, okay, if this kid's really talented, like he could potentially go to the NBA and be drafted and have like a crazy a crazy salary and this and that. This is the new sport that's only now kind of coming onto the mainstream. And so it's really hard to see a future that is stable.
Yeah.
And so I definitely understand why there was pushback. And so myself, I just like refused to, especially as I started getting older. I was like, I think once I started to become like 18, 19, I was like, okay, like I really want to be a full-time competitor. Like this is what I wanted to do. And so I was like, I think I could really do this. Like I saw guys, they would like win tournaments. They'd be able to like live off of teaching seminars. Eventually they would open schools and they were making a pretty good living for themselves. And so I was like, okay, at that time, that's what I wanted to do. And so I kind of just ended up just taking it under my own hands. And I ended up just kind of living a somewhat semi-nomadic jiu-jitsu life, until eventually I ended up here, and now I can live like as a professional athlete kind of full time. But it was definitely a long road and a hard one. But I wouldn't change anything for sure.
So rad. And I want to actually hear a little bit of the details on that nomadic sort of lifestyle too, and kind of where that took you, where you were, kind of where
Yeah.
that took you and what that path looked like. But I want to make sure, something that Giancarlo said, you guys, that is just freaking, I got chills as he said it, because I want you guys to understand the wisdom out of this. He's talking about security, right? And he's talking about this concept of security. And here's what I can promise you, working with Fortune 500 companies from around the world, building the schools that, Tim and I are building, working with all of these entrepreneurs and leaders in this space, I promise you what Giancarlo said about really at the end of the day, the only security is you being able to come inside here, figuring out who you are, making a decision and moving forward. It is so spot on, it's ridiculous. And there are grown men, no, majority of grown men don't ever come to that realization. I'm going to put my security in these external, my security is going to be in this degree or in this graduate degree, or my security is going to be in this job. Never, ever. And actually, there's never been a time where you're more insecure by doing that. The security is here going, doesn't matter what the road does. I'll figure out how to navigate that road because I know me, right? I mean, dude, I'm so glad that you said that. I could not agree more.
If any, I think one of the things that jiu-jitsu taught me was accountability.
Yeah.
Because the result on the mat is 100% dependent upon you.
Yes.
And so I think that's one of the most important like philosophical lessons of jiu-jitsu.
For sure. And that's why it is such a microcosm of life. It's why there's so many of these analogies now that are coming, because it is the physical chess match. It is okay, this person moves this way, this person moves this way. And now there are infinite number of possibilities every single time. And it comes down to you and you making the right moves at the right time. 100%. Oh, so good, man. So, okay. So where did you, and I apologize, but part of this is just because I don't know, but also part of it is just for these guys too. Where did you grow up and start the training, and where did that kind of nomadic journey take you?
So I was born and raised in South Florida, Miami-Dade County. And I lived there pretty much until I was about 19. And then after that, so I was kind of in a phase where my immediate family, my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters, everybody moved away, and they actually all live in different states now. And so that was kind of like our home base for a long time. That's where my parents immigrated to. And then everybody kind of dispersed as I got older for various reasons. And so at the time I was staying in Miami because I was kind of like, I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to try to pursue jiu-jitsu full time. And so the place that I was training at, I was like, I'm going to stay there and I'm going to see if I can just live here on my own. So I ended up living with my uncle, and he had 3 young kids at the time, and we were just like cramped up in this little apartment in Fort Lauderdale. And I was doing that for a while. I was working with him for a while on the side to make money and training. And then I had an opportunity to go, one of the guys that, so it's like a whole backstory, but he used to teach at the gym where I trained at the time in South Florida. And they opened a sister school in Houston. And so he was teaching there. He said, hey, Texas has a lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments, yada, yada, yada. If you want to come train, I have a couple of guys, they're competitors. The gym that I trained at was very much a recreational, like hobbyist gym. So most people were like working professionals, and I didn't really have, a lot of like great training partners at the time. I kind of outgrew the gym in a sense.
Yeah.
And so he was like, hey, we have a lot of like younger guys here that want to, compete and this and that. And so if you want to come by. So I literally just got a one-way ticket and was like, I'm going to go for a couple months and then go compete at world championships, which were like 3 months later. And I was a purple belt at the time. So still very much like the young, like amateur level. And
Van, you're,
Can you still hear me? Oh, so
yeah,
the
we can
screen
still
just kind
hear
of
you,
went
but
blank for a second.
Van, for some reason, we got a screen share going on here, man. So, I'm not sure what all. There
Oh,
we go.
there we go.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And so I just decided to go for it. And so I was living out of like, I had a big suitcase full of my stuff in my uncle's house. I just packed a bag. I went there with a one-way ticket, and at the end, I never ended up coming back. So they still have all my stuff. It's my uncle still has all my stuff. He's since moved then, and he still has like my big suitcase. But ended up going there, training, and then so fast forwarding, I went there, staying with friends and this and that, and I go to the World Championships and I literally lose my first match. So like it's like heartbreaking experience. And then stayed there for another year and a half. I ended up going to do another training camp. I wanted to go to Brazil, so I went there for 3 months the year later for the following World Championships. So I stayed there for a year and a half, saved up a bunch of money, bought a ticket, went to Brazil, and I trained for 3 months before the World Championships. Went to the World Championships. This time I lost in the fourth round, a very tight match against, at the time it was a guy that was a really well-known competitor at that level. So went a little bit further, pretty much dominated the first three and then lost a very, very tight match in the next one. And so after that, I went to Ohio for a bit. I went to North Carolina and trained with my professor who gave me my brown and black belt, Lucas Lepre, who's a six-time world champion. Then I had an opportunity to go to Boston, start teaching full time. So at that point, I was living fully off of jiu-jitsu. And then now I ended up here in Austin. So kind of bounced around a little bit.
Holy cow, man. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
So at any point in this, did you get, because I work with so many young men, and it's crazy. And I remember doing this same thing. I remember graduating high school, and being 17 and being like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to have my life figured out right now, right? Which now at 43, and I work with grown men who are like, I have no idea what I'm doing, and so
Right.
to think that a 17-year-old feels that way, but I get that. At any point during, as you're going around and you're making progress and you're doing all these amazing things, you're growing, you're becoming a better competitor, you're getting to where you eventually can live off of this. But at any point, did you start to wrestle in your mind and just go, oh, am I wasting time? Should I? Did you ever have that battle, or were you like, nope, I'm on the right track and I'm moving forward and here we go?
Yeah. I always had it, but I think it was a combination of me being both very like I genuinely wanted that, and I definitely struggled a lot with self-doubt early on especially, and just kind of like confidence in general. But what I felt the most was just like I didn't want to be like, I didn't want the people where I came from or even my family or anybody to think that I had tried something and failed. So I just like refused to fail at it. Like I was like, I know I need to make something happen out of this. And so it was like, I definitely struggled a lot with self-doubt, but it was like I definitely felt like every time that I hit like a wall, it was always within arm's reach, like the objective that I could. It's like, so for example, I told you I lost the first round of that World Championships at purple belt. So I kind of moved my whole life, first time I ever moved away to a different state. And I was living out of the gym, out of friends' couches, and bouncing around. And then all of a sudden, I take this road trip from Houston to California. I'm like ready to go to this World Championship. And first round, I lose by one advantage, which if you guys don't know, it's like basically the most tiniest score that exists in jiu-jitsu. And so it was a very, very tight match. Nothing really happened, and he had this one advantage on me, which isn't even a point score; it's just an advantage.
Yeah.
And then he gets the nod so it was a super close match, but I obviously lost first round. So you're like, oh shoot, I went, all this way and I lost first round. And then the following year, I told you I did the Brazil, and then I went to the quarterfinals, and it was a super tight quarterfinals, dominated my first three matches. And so I was like, man, I did really, really well. And then when I lost, it was so close, and I didn't realize that then, but now looking back at it, what was happening was I was I was doubting myself and I was holding myself back. And so
Yeah.
it's not that I could have won those matches. Like it was literally right there. I could touch the victory,
Yep.
but I lost because of me, not because of my opponent. And it wasn't until later in recent years that I started to kind of like come to that realization that,
Yeah.
it's really, I can do it. It's right there. I can see it. I can feel it. I'm so close. Like I can't stop, now. And I didn't want to, like, I didn't really want to do anything. I didn't really want to do anything else. I was really just 100% at this point, like focused. And it kind of amplified, like every time that I would feel that I've kind of reached a new level, that it only amplified my focus even more to where like now, I feel like I'm operating at a much higher frequency than I was back then, even though back then it was all very new to me.
So rad. And I love
Yeah.
what you said. You just refuse to fail.
Yeah.
And we say something like that, like it's a cliche or something, but dude, it's no, that's quite literal. It's like, no, man, I've put too much into this. I put too much time into this. There might be little setbacks, but that's not a fail. I refuse
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
But
I could not go back and just say, hey, I tried, but couldn't do it. So I stopped. Like I couldn't do that.
yes,
Yeah.
dude, absolutely. So what is it? I'm gonna be quiet after this one, guys, and I'm gonna let you guys. So if you guys have some questions, I want you guys to start putting your hands up, because I want you guys to be able to jump in and ask the questions too. So go ahead and start putting your hands up in the chat. So what is kind of the next target for you as you're moving forward? I mean, you had a pretty freaking stellar year here this past year. Like,
Yeah.
what's kind of the next? What do you got set for yourself?
Whenever I got a new milestone in my career, one of my friends told me this, and it always stuck with me. It was like, okay, so he told me this when I got I got a silver medal. It was my first real accomplishment, essentially, at the World Championships as a brown belt. So I made it all the way to the final, and again, I lost a super super tight match in the final against the guy who was the favorite to win. And so uh, he told me I was so bummed out because I lost, and I had like literally dominated every single match up until then, and then lost in the final, very very tight match. And so my friend told me I was all bummed out, and then he was like, man, like this is your new baseline. He's like, now you can get here. Now you'll never get anything less than this.
Yes.
And so I was like, that always stuck with me to where like, okay, now that I know that I can do this, like I shouldn't expect anything less of myself.
Mm.
And going into a tournament since then, I can't tell you statistically, but I'm pretty sure I never made it past getting to a final.
Yeah.
So I always went to the finals every single time because I was like, okay, I know I can get to the finals, so I'm going to get to the finals. And
Yes.
so that's like at the very least what I expected of myself. Now, obviously, you want to win, but it's better than losing first round 2 years prior, right?
Sure.
And um, so that's kind of like where I was at that point. And so now, because I just won essentially the biggest tournament that we have in grappling, it's like it would be like the equivalent of the Olympic Games for
Right.
grappling. Now I don't see it as I see it as like, okay, this is my new baseline, and I'm also at a very unique place in terms of like the transition that our sport is taking, because it's just starting to kind of go towards the mainstream.
Right.
And so I feel like I have like a duty and like an obligation to perform, um not just for myself and like for my own results, but for the sport itself.
Yes.
Because people want to see, like, we want to be able to attract essentially people that don't practice the sport to watch it and make it exciting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we're beginning to see in our sport. And so I want to now start thinking in terms of goals that, um, not goals that I've already achieved. Like I could obviously go and I could win another ADCC, but now I want to be able to do something that I haven't done before, and I want to be able to shoot towards goals that seem kind of scary to like say out loud. Like I never told anybody out loud that I wanted to be a world champion or that I thought I could be a world champion. But now I feel like I can, because I've done that, I could say that, hey, I want to go and I want to win the absolute. Like that's what I want to do next. Or I want to go and I want to do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And so once I did that, I felt like anything that I thought that I could do, just based around the road that I had taken to get there, was easy. Like I can do this. It's 100% possible, and there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do it as long as I set my mind to it.
So rad. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. And I love the fact that, we've got such amazing talent, but good humans that are in that position, like you said, that are going to be ambassadors of the sport growing now and getting that, hitting that critical mass to where now it is something that is known worldwide, and it is something that people are leaning into and really finding out about. I think it's pretty cool to be on the precipice and kind of setting that foundation, man. We were just talking beforehand, and I was saying, I didn't fight anywhere obviously near the level that Tim did, but I had some amateur MMA fights before MMA was as like what it is now. But my very first amateur fight, I had, Bruce Buffer was announcing, Ken Shamrock was there ringside,
Nice.
Couture was ringside, Boss Rutan was ringside, and there was just a weight around those guys because they were the OGs of something that was on the precipice of becoming big, and there was that respect, for them being that. And I feel like you are going to be in that class of guys that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now, when jiu-jitsu, everybody knows it and kids are involved in it and it's in schools and it's, you're going to look back and you're going to be one of those guys that's kind of that OGs, one of the OGs on the Mount Rushmore kind of deal. And that's a pretty friggin' spectacular thing to check off the list. That's pretty cool, man. So, friggin' love it. All right, Josiah, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir, for your time. And I do have 2 simple questions that will only take a few minutes.
Go ahead, buddy.
Question is, what rank are you as of now?
Belt rank or rankings so belt ranks, I'm a black belt. In terms of ranking in my weight class, I just won ADCC, so they have me at the first place ranking. Prior to that, I don't know what my ranking was going into ADCC, but now I'm the first ranked guy in my weight class.
That is very impressive, sir. And do you have any stripes on your black belt?
I think I'm supposed to get my first stripe soon. After 3 years as a black belt, which I've been 3 years, I'm supposed to get my black belt soon. I'm supposed to get my first stripe soon. So I think I'll be a 1 stripe pretty soon.
Yes, sir. And my second question is, do you by any chance remember how long it took you to graduate from your white belt?
From like get to my second belt?
Yes, sir.
I would say it probably took me around, I don't know exactly, but anywhere between like 8 months and a year, I think.
Thank
Probably
you, sir.
closer to a year. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got a young stud right there in Louisiana, and he's just jumping into the sport, and he's already signed up for a competition in March. He's getting after
St. Pierre is a good last name.
And St. Pierre is not a bad last name to bring into the sport. No doubt, man. No doubt.
Thank you.
Logan, go ahead, sir.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for your time today. And my question is a very simple one, but one I find to be incredibly beneficial to myself. So my question for you today, sir, is what qualities define a good leader?
I think that's a really good question. For me, the most important one is leading by example and not telling people this is what you should do and not living by what you preach. And so that would be one huge one. I think the most important one. That's one of the things I really love about Tim is that he is 100% lives what he preaches. And so you could just tell he's a natural born leader because he wants to uplift people, but he wants to push people, and he doesn't allow them to BS themselves because he doesn't do that for himself. He just, no matter what, like I see him on a regular basis, daily, and the guy's always working. And so that's one of the things I really admire about him and about the people that I've considered to be mentors in my life that have really even said something, like even just a sentence, like, this is your new baseline, like just something like that. I felt that the people that said it had validity in saying what they did that moved me, because they lived it, they didn't just say it. Like anybody could read a quote off of the internet and tell you, hey, this is what you should do, blah, blah, blah. And then you look at them and their life's a total mess. Like how are you supposed to believe that? There's no evidence behind it. But when somebody, says something and then they have, a structure behind it because they do what they say, I think that's a very, very important quality of a leader. And in addition to that, I would say not trying to change people, but instead trying to have people identify their strengths and then really reinforce those strengths, I think is important. Any team, if you look at any team, like I never really played team sports, a little bit, but not that much. But if you look at team sports, everybody has, their place on the field and they have their role. And so, you can't expect somebody who, is for example, you can't expect the goalie in soccer to be all of a sudden you throw him in the front and expect him to be scoring goals. Like it doesn't make sense. It's not his role. It's not his strength. And I think it's important when you're leading a group of people, whether it be in a business or whatever the case may be, you help people identify their strengths and really hunker down on those strengths. And that way the team can actually come together. So if you're leading a group of people, I'd say those would be the two qualities that are just off the top of my head, leading by example, and then having people identify their strengths. Don't try to change people and try to make them more like you, but instead just have everybody being on the same page and have people's kind of be able to identify people's strengths and have them identify their strengths and weaknesses and really hunker down on those strengths and have everybody, I think as a unit, everybody will work a lot better that way.
Logan.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Yeah. The second part of that answer is something I've literally never heard before, or I don't think in that concise form. So thank you, sir.
It's so
thank you.
So good. And it's right on the heels. I mean, I put something in for our dad's program earlier today because part of their program is they're broken down into these smaller units. And I've had some of the guys that have reached out to me and gone, man, just in these last couple of days going, okay, man, I got to lead this group of guys here, man. And I'm a little nervous about leading them, or I lead differently than I think they're going to respond to. Oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm bringing it back to what you just said right there is such sage advice. And it transfers into things like parenting too. And for a lot of guys, that is the way that helped him out. It's like, hey man, I have two little girls and I have a young man who's about to turn 7, right? I'm the same dad, but I have to lead the little girls slightly differently than him. And I also have to lead each one of them slightly differently because they're different people. My job as a leader is to make other leaders. It's not to make my little girls turn into a version of me. It's to make them the best possible version of themselves. And that's exactly what you just outlined, is each person playing their position, and let's play into those strengths, man. It's wisdom, you guys, 100%. Oh, so good.